Hey, it's Chris. Remember this game? Hidden Leaders, BFF Games. Why am I talking about it? Because they are coming back to crowdfunding with dum-da-da-dum-da-dum, Hidden Leaders, Forgotten Legends. What do you need to know about this game? Let's go through Rant review, 5 things you need to know. Let's do it. Hidden Leaders. For those that don't know and want to know a little bit more about the base game before we get into those details, let's talk about it for a second. You've got a board. You've got 2 faction markers on the board. You're just going to be manipulating those faction markers back and forth from one end to the other. Depending on how they're in relation to each other, depends on what factions win. You have a hidden leader, hence the name, and the hidden leader is going to have an allegiance to at least one, possibly 2 of those factions. You want to get your faction to win, beating the other factions, but you don't know what the other ones are. So not only do you have to mitigate that, you also have to have the most of that faction that wins of your 2 factions potentially than other people in order to actually beat them at the end. The manipulation is very simple, right? You're moving 1 this way, 2 that way, the further one back, the further one forward, and so on and so forth. One faction wins by having both of them in the black end. One faction wins by having them right next to each other. Or one faction wins by just being in front of the other and vice versa. Those are the 4 wins. So what is this offering? Because, I mean, it's just giving you a big unique deck of cards that you're slowly managing and whiffling your way through, trying to manipulate a certain number of face-up leaders in front of you as the game progresses, and the game ends when somebody has enough leaders that are face up in front of them. Because I say face up because you can manipulate them face up and face down to potentially lengthen or shorten the game, depending on if you're winning or losing. I mean, the basic concept of hidden leaders is relatively straightforward, right? A quick summary here at the beginning. Have 4 cards in your hand. Choose 1 card to play. Play it down into your tableau. Adjust the markers according to what the card tells you to do. Then discard 1 card to the fire, draw a card or 2 either from the inventory in front of you or the deck, pass it on to another person in terms of their turn. It's a very chaotic style interactive game. Very much a lot of take that. And that's probably point number 1, is that the expansion right here doesn't change that. The expansion does not make it any less take that. You need to know that. Now, point number 2 is that the expansion is adding 3 modules. The module of Guardians, the module of Corruption, and the module of Artifacts. I always mix feelings about modules because inevitably, I always feel like a certain playstyle tends to favor a certain module. And so that's the risk with sometimes these expansions, is that instead of sometimes encompassing one thing that you're either really going to like or really not, you kind of get a couple things that you may like or you may not, and it's hard to tell, and you can't necessarily mix and match them all, so you're not always utilizing the full box. And so that's the plus and minus there. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is I really like the Artifacts module. The Artifacts module basically just adds a little bit of asymmetry to your hidden leader. It gives you a special power, and it allows you to use it a certain number of times whenever you choose. And it basically gives you a little bit more control, because the one thing that is going to be the biggest criticism of this game in general is that laying down these cards, especially at a higher player count, you don't have freaking control of what's going to happen. If you're playing with 3 other people, 3 other people are going to get a chance to move those markers however they want in ways that you're not going to want until it gets back around to you. And so the artifact is going to give you just that much inching more control, as well as asymmetry apart from just the faction. And so I think that above all else is by far and away the best thing with this expansion. My personal favorite, if you will. The other issue that we sort of get into with this, right, is that there's only 4 relative outcomes. And once, especially at the lower player counts, people start manipulating in certain ways, you get a certain gist of what's going to happen, right? It loses the hidden aspect of things. And so one of the other modules is the Guardians module. And the Guardians module basically adds a little bit of a are you that faction or not element, because they have Guardian token now on the board. And this Guardian token is going to be manipulated just like the other 2 tokens that are on the board, right? But you're adding Guardian cards to the deck as well, that if you discard them, if you bury them, if you get rid of them, they are going to move this Guardian token, along with several other ways to do so. But you always are now looking at the other person sort of like BSGS, like, you know, did they discard that because they truly don't care about the Guardian and it's just, you know, something they want to get out of their hand so that they don't have to deal with it, so they can get the cards that they really need. Because that is the other thing that this game does a lot better than some of the other games with these static card hand managements, right? At the end of your turn, you discard and you draw back up, and then you discard down. And so you draw up to 4 cards, you discard down to 3. And so you're going to be playing a few cards, you're going to be drawing a few, so you can get a lot of turnover, which is, you know, I just ran into another game or two this past weekend where that is not the issue, and a static hand can make it or break it in terms of part of the element of the immersion, the fun, and the gameplay. And so that is still incorporated. But now you're adding that extra element of, you know, is the Guardian in play? So for example, if you're playing with 2 people, right, you have 2 of the regular faction leaders and you have 1 of the Guardian leaders. You get shuffled up, you pass one out to each, and no one knows if the Guardian one got picked. Rinse and repeat at higher player counts, just adding a regular leader or 2. And so it gives a slightly more dynamic approach. The only thing I'll say is that there probably aren't enough Guardian cards. And that's sort of the balance that, you know, I would imagine has gone into this, but I just can't speak. I would like a few more Guardian cards because they just don't come up as frequently to create that, right? And that's what you want out of a hidden element game. You know, because I'm still a little bit mixed on the hidden element of the flipping back and forth, because sometimes that's very helpful depending on what cards you get, and other times it just seems to be a miss. That's by far and away my biggest criticism of the game. It just seems from that element, it doesn't quite click with me for whatever reason. Oh, and did I mention that the Guardian cards are freaking strong. They are going to swing things dramatically different ways, and the Guardian Fate cards are going to even give you more interaction. Point 4. The corruption. This is inevitably the module that I personally found the least appealing. Not that it's bad, but it just doesn't do anything for me. The corruption module, essentially, when you meet a certain threshold of cards to meet the corruption, you draw a corruption token. Great. Everybody else, including yourself, then draws from the corruption bag you place on one of your heroes. And again, it's one of those things where it could be really utilized to the max, or it could be a significant element that just does not play as strongly throughout the game if your group is not going to emphasize that. It doesn't necessarily make you emphasize it if you just choose not to, even if you include it. You know, unlike the Guardians, unlike the artifacts, where, you know, you're going to have them and it is going to be ever present constantly. And that's the difference between those 2 modules, in my opinion, why I prefer those other ones overall. But it does give a little bit of allegiance. It gives a little bit of mitigation for the take that players may not want, because some of the corruption tokens will be basically protection. You flip it over if you're targeted and you can block whatever was going to attack your hero, or you can flip it over and, hey, they just buried one of your guys. Boom, you're taking one of their guys off the field too, which again is okay, but it isn't my preferred method of playing this game in that sense. The last point, and this is sort of a lighter one, but I feel like this is important to state. When you have a game like this that is cards, right? When you have cards that are going into this, I love the fact that games do not duplicate cards. This is all unique cards in both expansions. You're not getting duplicates of characters, you know, especially ones that you're just like, oh, I drew this one again. Oh, I got this one. Oh, you got that one. Oh, man. No, I love the fact that everything is completely unique. That cannot be understated in games, how much of a difference that makes to get to the table, to want to play it, and to be able to just keep it in rotation, because you're always seeing new things, you're always getting new combos, you're always seeing what else is out there. Now, I would like to see, again, probably a few more artifacts to do that same sort of thing. You know, again, I'm not a game balancer, I'm not a game designer, so I would like to see it, but whether or not you can do it and still keep it in the confines of not making one or another too over or underpowered, you know, that's where, you know, I just say, it'd be nice. But I understand the constraints that are sometimes there too that I'm not completely aware of, so take that for what you will. Final thoughts on Hidden Leaders. I mean, this is a short video because the concept of this game is not difficult to understand. Draw, play, discard, draw, rinse and repeat. And it's nice from that sense. I will say, though, that with at least the artifacts module, that is a module I would not want to play without. It is a module that I would always include. And I would probably throw the Guardians in there as well on top of that, to be frank with you. I probably would always play with those two from now on, knowing that what they add, the dynamics that they give, the mitigation that they offer a little bit more, especially with the hidden element getting more emphasis. Again, I'm still not, a huge fan of the flipping back and forth. That doesn't do as much for me. I kind of wish there was more just taking out instead of flipping back and forth, but that's my own personal taste as well. So take that for what you will. So there you go. Those are my 5 quick thoughts on the Hidden Leaders expansion, whether or not it's right for you, whether or not you should be picking it up if you have the base game, or whether or not you're getting and trying to figure out if you want to get both as well. BFF Games, sending me the stuff to be able to talk to you about in the first place. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts below in the comment section. Do the YouTube thing. That's all I got. Stay classy. Rant review over. Yeah, we're doing it like this now. At least for the time being. Peace out.